Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, so let's begin, right? Um, no, we don't deliver to the UK. Not yet, anyway. It's on the roadmap, they say. So first things first, thinking and talking about user adoption, we wanted to talk today about a couple of different perspectives, right? What is the perspective of supporting and enabling user adoption as a sales professional as you engage with your customers and prospects? And what is it like to go through the evaluation process as a consumer, right? So you really want to understand, both lenses. And so as we move forward and go throughout this, we're definitely going to cover some aspects of both sides, but we do have poll, Q&A, and messages and chat. So feel free to use that throughout as well. We'll try to address any that we can. I believe there is a recording, but also for those of you paying attention right now, bear in mind and follow up and ask for the details on our white paper and what is it called, Mark? The selection?
Yes, we've got a technical audit and a adoption checklist that we'll be putting together, compiling with Outplay. So just let David know, and we'll probably be hosting that on your website so people can download it or we can shoot people emails.
Absolutely. So basically, it's a checklist for how to evaluate shopping for a tool from multiple perspectives within your organization. That said, so dating, what to know before you commit. Go ahead and get us kicked off here, if you would, Moritz.
Perfect. So hello, everyone. So basically, my idea was we want to give you the presentation today that I wish that I had 15 years ago. So I'm in sales since basically almost all my professional life. And some of these key concepts that we're going to tell you, talk a little bit about over the next couple of minutes are unfortunately concepts that I only had to fail up upon as we learned from Maxwell. So basically, first, before adoption, so from a seller perspective, like what is a buyer also looking for before they're even going to decide to go with your solution? So key component that a lot of buyers saw, I saw them not doing it, but also a lot of sellers not necessarily encouraging it, is what is your current state? So what is it what do you have right now? Which tools do you have, for example, if we look at SaaS? Who owns it and what does it do? But most important when we talk about current state is what problem do I actually need to solve? If it's just a nice to have thing, I think very often it's not going to go through. If it's a must-have thing, chances you're going to be successful from a selling perspective are pretty high. But then also not only the current state, but also the future state. So what do you want and why do you want it? Does it solve the pain that you've previously told me that you have? Who will own it? So once again, like who's going to be the daddy or the mama of that current corresponding solution? And is that person actually the right person and why? And why? What will it do? What will it do in 1 month, in 3 months, in 12 months, etc.? So it's really all about, again, we're all sales professionals, so it's really about current state, status quo, and where is it that you want to go and why do you want to go there? Another one where I failed big time is get executive buy-in and get it early. So it's really nice talking with a junior manager, depending again on which area you're selling into. But ultimately, you want to be able to talk with the person that's going to make the decision and that also holds the budget. And so it's perfectly fine in a relatively early stage during even the discovery process to, for example, ask, hey, it sounds like we're going in the right direction here. Just ultimately, like when this is going to go through, assuming in a couple of months or weeks, ideally, who else will we need to talk to from a decision-making process? It's obviously a question you've heard before, but I've certainly failed that one a couple of times.
More than once, you're saying?
More than once.
Good deal.
In the early days.
Well, yeah, take us through the next little cluster here, Mark.
Yeah, so similar to Morris, I've been selling software for a long time. I've been building inside sales departments, so I've actually been getting that software into companies and having my reps use it. And now I run fractional sales ops where I really help getting these platforms adopted. And one of the key things I'm going to have a plan is move that to the top of my list, because we want to have a plan. When you find that software, what is the plan to take you from that current state to that future state? And make sure that plan is documented, because if you don't have that documented, Because the CEO is like, yeah, or the VP of sales, they're all like, okay, we're going to implement Outplay and we're going to start doing this outbound stuff. And like next month, we're going to have 30 meetings. It's like, well, you know that first we got to wire it up and then we got to train everybody on it. And then it's a crawl, walk, run process, because if you start throwing a bunch of garbage in there, you're going to burn your email domain. So what is the plan? How long is it going to take you there? And make sure everybody agrees to the documentation. And, you know, documentation includes that playbook. What are the important information that folks need to have when they're using it? Like, what's that cue card? Because the first month of using any new platform, people are always going to be going back. And the last thing you want to do is saying, I don't know how to do that, so I'm just not going to do it. And that's key. And particularly as a seller, it's trying to understand what is the playbook. Ask them if they have a playbook. And then when you get that playbook, you can start to find out who are their friends. What's all the other technology that's working with them? So, you know, you have a lot of folks that are like, oh my God, Outplay is awesome. It pushes all the engaged leads up to the top. I get to close them faster. This is fantastic. But I'm using Lotusoft. I want to connect it with Lotusoft. It's like, and you look at them, it's like, well, no, Outplay doesn't integrate with Lotusoft. So, you know, we could use Zapier, which is kind of the gin and tonic that gets to make sure that all the friends get together. Sorry, that was Morris's joke and I just blew it. Should have let him do it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like you need to know what is that technological ecosystem that it's going to fit into. Because even if it's the best software out there to do that one specific job, if it doesn't talk or communicate with everything else, at least partially or well, or have some other way of doing it, it's not going to do what everybody's going to be disappointed. And then there's going to be churn. So make sure you understand what ecosystem it's getting dropped into. And once you know that current state, the future state, the executive buy-in, then we move from the dating scene to our segue.
Maybe, sorry, I want to make a final comment on the have a plan. Coming to your prospect or to your future client and showing that you do have a plan, that you have, for example, an implementation plan consisting of the various different steps, the gates, etc., and like who's responsible for doing what. That also shows that you've done this before and that they can trust you, that you will follow this plan and that you will ultimately deliver. So it's also something I didn't do in my early days as a seller, but then at some point when I figured out what kind of effect it has, I would bring a plan, a project plan, an implementation plan to every single opportunity. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah, a lot of times the seller leaves the plan up to the CS, and by then, as you said, if you bring it forward, you can use that as a leverage to close the deal.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a differentiator.
All right.
So basically, these are all the. Go ahead.
Now we're happily dating, and as Mark said, let's move on. What's the next step in our relationship? Woo!
You got to make a little bit more of a commitment.
Ideally in Mykonos, beautiful. It's a very pretty picture. So now looking into actual adoption. So during the adoption, and so number one is we said that will be a key component where again I've failed up, as coming back to Maxwell. Communication. So what are our communication channels, and also what are our escalation channels in case something doesn't work well? Easy hack for me, it's just commit to having a weekly call early. It's like, hey, like let's just talk every Monday at like 2:00 in the afternoon and see how things are going, what is going well, what is maybe not going so well, and what could we be doing better. But also communication support. So look into their support model. And ideally, if you have the opportunity for a proof of concept or for a test, we're going to talk about a pilot, we're going to talk about this later, just issue a couple of support tickets and see what kind of support you get. For certain software solutions out there, they're also, I would say, famous or infamous for the support that you will get. Then onboarding and training, also very important, like when, how, who, etc. Ideally, that's part of the implementation plan as well. And then training. So what will training look like? How will it be delivered? Will it be recorded? Will it be in written form, etc.? Like those are all really, really crucial things during the actual adoption process. And from a seller perspective, again, if you can bring these to the table early, it shows once again that you're a professional and that you know what you are doing.
So once you've got all of that organized, the key is how do you get into the hands of the users? And it's like you want to pilot that proof of concept. And this is where it's like, okay, what process do you want this to accelerate? How are we going to make sure that we're going to prove that it does, like living in the seat? And that proof of concept, it could be as simple as, all right, I'm going to walk you through a day in the life sitting in the platform. Or it could be, I'm going to put you in a 30-day trial where we're going to give you training and get you in there, depending on the size and scope of the company and as well as the complexity of the platform. But being able to show someone how it works. We had this one sales rep. He's now a VP of Sales at Panther at Duo. And he would ask them, it's like, all right, we're going to run this proof of concept. Do you want our platform to be easy to use, easy to manage, or easy to implement? And they would pick one. And when we come to the demo, he would show that one. If they would start asking other questions, he would keep them locked into that proof of concept. He said, you were originally interested in this. We're going to make sure that we answer this question. If you want, we'll do 2 more demos. He never ran 2 other demos. Once he nailed that first one, it was down, and he was able to close that deal, and also have that documented. Always document. What do they need? Make sure, medical profession, everybody's got to fill out the EMR. They got to fill out all the documentation. Make sure you document everything. What do they want to do? Where do you want to go from here to there? And then you start doing the measurements. Okay, this is our current state. This is our future state. We want to go from here to here. We have the document. And what are those numbers? We're going to get, our team is going to increase activities by 30%. Fantastic. So we need a benchmark to figure out, how do we know when we've hit that 30%?
So I'm kind of curious, Moritz, from your perspective, what are some of the KPIs or key metrics for business development efforts?
Well, for business development efforts, I guess it depends really on the company and on the role. But for example, for me, it is really revenue generated. So gotcha. I'm not a fan of like meetings or calls or emails or all that kind of stuff. For me, ultimately, it is revenue generated in US dollars, euros, or whatever currency you want to have. However, the way I always explain it to my team is it's like a Formula One race, or NASCAR if you want in the US, which is revenue generated is being on podium at the end. But in order to get there, you also need to look at everything else, which absolutely is meetings, emails, calls, opportunities, and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that ultimately matters to me, key KPI, currency.
Revenue, currency, dollars. Good deal. Yeah, and so that's kind of an example of some metrics you could look at for the use case of an SDR team. But understand what the KPIs are for whatever platform it is you're evaluating or selling. And make sure you're speaking to or learning to those metrics.
Correct. I mean, it really depends on the tool. It could be monthly active users. It could be daily active users. It could be number of tickets submitted. Lower is better, obviously. I've seen all possible versions of this.
Okay.
Yeah, well, because it's essentially going back to we were here, we want to get there. What is here and what is there, and what's that number that gets us there? For sales, we're always looking at revenue. If you're looking, sometimes it's not even revenue, it's number of new deals in the month, and it could even be something as specific as how many enterprise deals did we close versus small fry close deals?
Right.
How much did we change the ASP of a deal in a specific swim lane? So it's understanding where we were and then where we're going. So,
and I think it's also important to point out that the tool or platform you're evaluating has its own internal forms of measurement and reporting, of course, right? Where it integrates well with other reporting tools like your CRM, et cetera. That's as far as tool evaluation goes, back on point and track. But here we go, transitioning from adoption, unless there's anything else to add, gentlemen.
Well, you got to make sure that all the platforms talk to each other, because you could have all the great metrics, but if they're not talking to each other, and this is where a BI tool, you get to blend the data between multiple systems.
Right. Right. So you've gone through, the dating process. You've made the commitment and the engagement and really invested some time, energy, and effort into the relationship with the new platform. And then next is, hopefully the happily ever after. Right. So what does it look like after you've done all the appropriate steps, failing up, as it were, and what's it look like afterwards? So we'll start with something familiar here. Moritz?
Well, surprise. The first thing you should not stop doing now that your solution has been implemented is you should not stop measuring. And unfortunately, like I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps right now because I did that once. I did stop measuring after implementation, and I did lose $1 million customer. It just hurts. Easy hack again on that front. For example, something like a quarterly business review, where you force yourself and your customer to just briefly sit together every 3 months, review the jointly agreed upon KPIs, review what is going well, what is not going so well, and what do we want to do for the next 3 months. For that one customer that I lost, I didn't do that. I was, I guess, lazy or complacent, a little bit of both. We only did it once a year, and an RFP came up and the client was gone. So don't learn from my mistakes. Then obviously, since you are now continuously measuring, you're also continuously improving. You're continuously looking like, what could we do better? What could we do different? What other functionality would you like from our tool, etc.? Like it's in German, there's this word called kontinuierlicher Verbesserungsprozess. Yes, have fun with that one. Basically, in English, continuous improvement process. You just want to you don't want to stop. Once the contract has been signed, it's not over. And then last but not least, you also want to invest from both sides, right? You want to get a bigger, we talked about pizza earlier, you want to get a bigger share of the pizza. And so that's obviously also something that we see not only in software sales, but also in all other areas, that once you have a customer, you also want to understand, okay, how can I grow within that customer, either with additional users or additional services or additional products, tools, etc.
Beautiful.
So the next portion, they're all pretty much the same, because once you're working with the company, you're doing your quarterly review, you want to make sure the documentation is on point, that things haven't changed. Oftentimes, particularly when you're dealing with an outbound sales team, you start looking at the data. It's like, did the ICP change? Did the personas change? Like what has changed, to make sure that the playbooks are being useful, because you built those playbooks for the first set of users, and there's a sizable amount of tacit knowledge that was passed on from the initial trainer. But now hopefully that company has grown, they've adopted more people, and now is that playbook still useful for the new people? Was there parts of it, the secret sauce, that was kind of missed? So make sure that those documents are up to date, reevaluate those documentations, make sure that you're continually updating them. The other thing is that software's changed, the UI changes, the interface changes. When you're writing these playbooks, you got to make sure that the playbook is up to date, because there's nothing more frustrating when you have a question. It's like, oh, page 4 in the playbook. And you turn to page 4 and it's like, this doesn't look anything like it. So at Duo, I had Duo Security, I had a rule. It's like, if you're a sales rep and you got a question about ops, if you ask me and it's in the playbook, you pay me $1. If you ask me and it's not in the playbook, I pay you $1. And one of the reps actually framed the $1. That's how meticulous we were with the playbook, to make sure that it was on point, that she finally won it. And the last part of it is to understand that everything is dynamic. The platforms that you're purchasing, they're companies, and they're growing, evolving, and changing. You as a company are growing, evolving, changing, and both of you are pivoting. Like, let's look at the entire ecosystem of all the technologies you use. There used to be like a platform that you would just get for lead provisions. There would be just a platform for CRM. There was a platform for marketing automation. There's a platform for sales enablement. But what's happening is there's consolidation, and companies are either adding those features or ingesting other companies. And now it's a way of saying, all right, now I don't have to use that gin and tonic to get all those technology friends to work together. Did it land that time? It's better. Because now it's an integrated system, and trying to figure out, all right, where are we going? Are they growing with us? And it's one of these interesting things to understand, like, what are the internal dynamics of the company, and whether figure out if they fit with you and your internal dynamics, and making sure that you're both going in the same direction. Because at the end of the day, it takes a village to grow a company. And, you got a village of companies growing a village of companies. And that's what we're doing. And the sales rep is just someone traveling from village to village, introducing you to all their friends and saying, this is how we can help you.
That's an interesting visual. I just pictured a traveling salesman with a like a leather satchel in nomad times. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I think what everyone was able to hear here a little bit is we've really tried to do this from the seller perspective, but obviously, like, it's also important to see all of these points from the buyer perspective. So, like, as a buyer, what is it that I expect? And if a seller does that to me, I'm happy. But as a sales rep, also, that everyone understands, like, this is what the buyer expects from me. Maybe he or she doesn't even know that yet, but if I do that, it's going to increase my chances. So in the 6 minutes and 7 seconds that we still have, I would say our plan worked out very, very well.
It's time for therapy.
We want to do some Q&A. And no, I'm not going to share which client I lost because I didn't do a regular business review.
Well,
but I'm happy to share more F-up stories.
So there are two things I'll go ahead and share. One, Moritz, we had a positive response for you sharing the joke said appropriately. So Max voted for that to happen. So if you could please deliver that joke, that'd be great.
I'll try. So basically, when we were talking on the first slide about getting to know them, right? Like dating, like you want to get to know their friends, or in other words, you want to get to know their ecosystem. So like which tools, which other software do they use? What kind of software? So like, again, like even, I mean, in my world, it was even like, do you use cloud, or like, is it hosted, or like which data centers and stuff like that?
Yep.
And if you don't like their friends, there's two options. Option number one is you can use Zapier. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It's not necessarily the best thing. Or you can, like in real life, just have a lot of gin and tonics. But if you don't like their friends, even with a lot of gin and tonics, you don't like their friends. That was kind of like the joke, but never mind.
Yeah. No worries. Well done. I also want to hear the German word again. That's a personal request.
I'm going to put it in the chat. It's kontinuierlicher Verbesserungsprozess.
All right. I'm going to practice that. Excellent. All right, so Q&A time, everybody in TV land. What kind of questions do you have for Moritz, Mark, myself? Also, as we get those questions put together, on the screen here, you have the opportunity to get to know us more. So you should be able to scan each of these and get to the contact details and follow up and LinkedIn profiles of our glorious speakers. So quick shout out. Thanks, Mark and Moritz, for joining us today on this wonderful webinar here at RevCon. Don't forget to ask about the upcoming white paper and user adoption checklist.
Manar is actually asking, like, do we have a playbook that we can share with everyone? So that is exactly going to be that user adoption checklist. So basically, again, also from Mark's professional side now, he's basically working with companies to implement technology. So it's one of his many wizardry skills. And so basically, we're going to share that playbook. But then you can also see, okay, like what is the buyer looking for, and what do I need to be ready to do, or what should I be proactive about? So which if I had that 15 years ago, oh my God, I would maybe still have hair.
Well, my hair is digitally enhanced. So there's a couple of ways of answering that, because there's, there's a playbook which is different from which is showing you the steps that reps use every day when they're using a platform. And then there's also, a technology audit. What systems do you have? What do they do? How are they connected? What are the customer success representatives that work with it? And all of that. being able to answer all those questions. And then there's, okay, when I want to have new software, what do I want it to do? Like being able to articulate in a very simple manner, like what's the current state, what's the future state? I'm being invaded here. So, and so this is the joy of work from home. We're never sure.
What's the adapter?
I don't know, Mr. Ben.
The adapter that was she yesterday.
What'd
you do?
So,
yeah.
What'd you do with the adapter?
Sound.
Now this is the absolute proof that this is live.
Yeah, live, uncut.
Not a recording. Only at RevCon, right?
Yes.
RevCon,
Absolutely.
RevCon. All right. Any other questions?
We're not.
Or ideas?
Or comments, or like how much you like Moritz's suit, or anything.
No, man. I mean, I would love to tell some of those stories of like, again, like, some of these things, like now they're very natural and like, but I've had to learn some of these things like through so much pain. Oh, thank you, JP.
So I had a recent story where a sales rep had assured me that their platform did something. And when they told me, they assured me, yes, no problem, no problem, no problem. And then I got in, I paid my bill, and I'm like, okay, I can't figure this out. And I'm pretty technical, so I find it a challenge. And then I finally got to customer support, and they were like, no, it doesn't do this. And here's the thing: it's like, documenting, being able to have that documentation, saying, here's the steps that I needed to have done. The sales reps approved all of this, and then I went back to them and said, this is why I bought it. I churned on them within 5 days. And I had all of this documented. I said, this is what I need to have done. And they were kind of shocked how well I had this articulated, because I'd been able to prove that the sales rep had told me that, yes, it does do this thing. So
yeah, and from a seller perspective, though,
Yeah.
like it's also important to say that this is a super powerful tool. So when a buyer wanted the proof of concept, what we used to do is what's called a proof of concept success criteria document. And so you would define like what would success look like, and if the proof of concept would be successful, it would automatically transfer into a 2 or 3 year MSLA.
Nice.
So like you can basically use this the other way around as well, to basically get buy-in for a long-term engagement early. All right, 5 seconds.
Yeah, one more question. What sort of software are you using in the POC pilot process?
Oof, I think now we're out.
Whatever
But
software they want.
If Clayton what sort of software are you using in the POC pilot process?
Where do you find these? The only one I see is, how do you make sure your reps are following the playbook?
So Clayton, if you can still hear us, I never used I used a Microsoft Word document.
Yeah.
So like,
just to document, as long as you're capturing the information, you're good.
Yeah, and then
Not a
like
specific analysis.
and then for example, yeah. So not there is, I don't know of any like POC success software.
Word doc.
Like you can literally use Microsoft Word or a Google Slide or whatever.
Yeah. So
I don't think they can still hear us.
Well, if they can, for those of you that can, you could type 1 in the chat if you could still hear us. Wink, wink. But hoping you can. If you can, follow up with any of us, any of these wonderful speakers, these gentlemen that came and joined me today for this great time with you all here at RevCon. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and keep on outplaying.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Ciao, ciao.